Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In the blink of an eye, summer is almost upon us. One of the gadgets I really liked last year for beating the heat was the Torras Coolify 2. This wearable, really quirky cooler that gets super cold on these conductive surfaces but also blows air, and you can also use in the winter as a heater as well. Just for the neck, it will target that specific region and your face, of course, to give you the illusion that you are much colder or much warmer. So it was really neat, but now the company is back with the Coolify 2S, which is pretty much their third generation attempt at this product. But this time around, there is a new companion app that some of the competitors to Torras have also started to adopt. So in response, you can now control a lot of the modes more easily on your smartphone and get you more granularity as you customize it. The packaging has also slightly changed. Now it's a little bit more of an eco-friendly approach where the cardboard box is slightly smaller, and again that cooling surface is going to be more effective as well compared to some units that only have a fan. And inside here we have just the cardboard box that can be recycled, and then we have the carrying case that you still get. But this time around it's made of more of a fabric material as opposed to the plastic on the original that was more like a visor of sorts. So side by side you can tell that it is going to be easier to transport, although I would say the original maybe looks a little bit more cooler from that translucent perspective, but nonetheless this one is more practical, and the fabric texture also just makes it look a little more comfy as well, more form-fitting. Otherwise we have on the inside here a cutout which stores the USB Type-C cable. If you are charging up the unit, it takes less than 2 hours to top up, so very quick using 18 watts. Otherwise, unzipping this donut-like shape, we have, of course, the 2S. I will mention that there is enough space for you to also pop in the charging cable. It's not a ton of room, but you can still squeeze it in there. And a closer look at the design, we have a mostly polycarbonate surface with a little bit of shimmer to it that makes it look quite good, glossy, and then there is a bit of a rubber accent there on the hinge that makes it feel a little bit more grippy and also resistant to slight bending as you're wearing it and removing it. Now these two are the conductive surfaces that get super cold or hot, and then there is the fan along with some ventilation grills that will be blowing upwards towards your face. Plus on the very bottom we have the Type-C port for charging. So this port is fully revealed. It does mean that like the Coolify 2, this is not going to be a fully waterproof design just yet. It will be sweat-proof, but if it's raining, for example, obviously you don't get it wet. Then we have just a power key on the side, which if you turn it on, you also notice a small LED indicator. We can tap on it again to cycle through some of the modes in terms of cooling mode 2, cooling mode 3, which will change how cold as well as how quickly the fans are starting to spin for the maximum effect, and then turning it off. By the way, you can also click on another key here on the other side to switch between the different modes. For instance, going into just a fan mode that will turn off the cooling pad but still only use the fans. It takes up a little bit less juice but doesn't quite get as convincing in terms of that air conditioning effect, but you can toggle that on and off, as well as long hold for about 2 seconds to go into that heat mode. That will turn off the fans, but now the pads will start to get warm, and similarly you can go through different heating levels, 3 different modes that you can pick between. Here's a quick size comparison with that aforementioned Coolify 2 from last year. You can tell that even the ventilation grills really haven't changed too much. It can be a little hard to distinguish, but perhaps they'll also bring out additional color versions in the future that could also make it pretty neat. Technically, there's a 5,000 milliamp hour capacity battery, getting runtime between 3 to 28 hours. So 3 hours is if you are using it in the Coolify mode 3, which is the coldest, plus the highest fan speed. 28 hours would be if you're using only the fan in the minimum mode. It will last obviously a lot longer. So if you are an owner of the current generation Coolify 2, the functionality I wouldn't say might be enough to justify upgrading just yet, since fundamentally the effect is still quite similar. But of course, if you're a new user, it's going to be more compelling to have that app control. So here's a quick demo of the companion app. Add a device, make sure that Bluetooth and location services are turned on, and we can instantly find the Coolify 2S. Another benefit of having a app connected device is there will be some occasional firmware updates that you're able to upgrade to potentially increase functionality. You can have just a gentle mode turn on, and you can also go into a aforementioned mode 2, and this is the mode 3 between the 3 levels of just a fan. Of course, it will be the loudest on fan mode 3, If you're having a conversation though, you may want to slightly lower that setting there. Overall, loudness and in fact the fans and motors I believe are unchanged from the Coolify 2, so working well enough. So one thing I will say is that the app doesn't get you additional granularity as compared to the switches that we saw there earlier between those 3 levels. For example, if you could slide in between levels 2 and 3, that's not something that we have here on the app just yet. Another thing to keep in mind is on the cooling mode, you can't only use the cooling pad and not have the fan also activated, which I think is something that maybe they can also try enabling in a future software update that will get you even more control. Say if you just want to have your skin feel a little bit cold, you don't want the fans. Perhaps if you are, like I said, having a conversation, that can be maybe a 4th mode, but right now they are tied together. And then of course we have the heat mode that you can also press on. The one benefit is of course you can easily toggle on here without having to press on the keys multiple times to go between say modes 1 to 3, since on here it's just a simple click away. So it can be a little bit faster as you're using it. There's also a timer function on the very bottom, which is new, where you can let it run for say X number of hours up to 4, and then it will turn off after that usage. And you can also tap on the settings here on the top to turn on and off the prompts, which is that speaker that you heard. If you don't want to have that beeping sound, you can turn it off. Now, in terms of comfort and wearability, I would say it's, again, the same as before. The weight hasn't changed, which is to say it's actually quite good when it comes to just putting on your collarbone, even as you're walking around. Quite similar, in fact, to a pair of smaller headphones that you're wearing on your neck. So you can tell that, again, it's going to be quite similar in terms of volume. It does make a noticeable difference if you're wearing it in the heat, especially as temperatures soar past, let's say, 80 degrees. You will get a lot more of that air movement. The skin here that is in contact with the pad does get noticeably cold, and it creates a pretty convincing illusion that you are in an air-conditioned environment, although of course your arms and your legs are not getting the same treatment. The heating mode, again, is completely silent, which is nice, and it just helps you, again, stay a little bit more cozy if you are in the winter time. It's similar to one of those rechargeable hand warmers, except now it's acting for your neck. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the Coolify 2S, the upgraded newest generation model of this wearable air conditioner slash heating gadget, which I think is still, again, quite clever in terms of how it's being engineered, and it's surprisingly effective with those large conductive pads, which by the way is the same technology found on a lot of these smartphone gamer coolers on the market, where you attach onto the back of your phone and then that contact area gets cold. It's doing that similar effect and offers, again, a little bit more control versus before. You can check out additional details if you're interested in the links down below. That's been the clever Torras Coolify 2S.